Canada's Arctic pivot sends shockwaves through Washington and NATO. By International Affairs Analysis. Washington and NATO capitals are closely watching Ottawa this week after a dramatic shift in Canada's defense posture triggered intense geopolitical debate across North America and Europe. In a widely discussed analysis segment on MSNBC, veteran journalist Rachel Maddow examined what she described as a stunning strategic pivot by Canada, one that could reshape Arctic security and redefine the U.S.-Canada defense relationship for decades to come. At the center of the controversy is Canada's accelerated push toward meeting NATO's long-standing defense spending benchmark of 2% of GDP, combined with a renewed sovereignty-first approach to Arctic security. While Canadian officials frame the move as a necessary modernization effort, the timing and messaging have raised eyebrows in Washington and among NATO planners. A long-delayed target suddenly fast-tracked. For years, Canada has faced criticism from NATO allies, particularly the United States, for lagging behind the alliance's defense spending goals. Like several European members, Ottawa traditionally argued that geography, alliance integration, and diplomatic engagement reduced the need for rapid military expansion. That position now appears to be changing. According to the analysis highlighted by Maddow, Canadian leadership has signaled a willingness to accelerate defense investment timelines, particularly in areas tied to Arctic surveillance, northern infrastructure, and rapid response capabilities. While Canada has not officially announced a sudden overnight jump to the 2% threshold, defense planners are reportedly working to compress what was once a decade-long roadmap into a much shorter window. The Arctic, once seen as a frozen buffer, has become one of the world's fastest evolving strategic theaters. Why the Arctic suddenly matters more than ever? Climate change has opened previously inaccessible sea routes, exposing vast natural resources and shortening global shipping lanes. As Arctic ice recedes, competition among global powers has intensified. Russia has dramatically expanded its Russian military presence over the past decade, reopening Soviet-era bases, deploying advanced missile systems, and increasing naval patrols. China, though not an Arctic nation, has declared itself a near-Arctic state and invested heavily in polar research, infrastructure, and dual-use technologies. Canada, which possesses the world's second-largest Arctic landmass, now finds itself at the center of this emerging rivalry. The Arctic is no longer theoretical, Maddow noted in her segment, it's operational. Washington's uneasy reaction. What reportedly caught U.S. defense officials off guard was not Canada's desire to modernize, but the language of independence surrounding the shift. For decades, Arctic defense has been deeply integrated through NORAD, the joint U.S.-Canada Aerospace Defense Command. Canadian and American radar systems, fighter patrols, and early warning networks have operated as a single shield. Recent messaging from Ottawa emphasizing sovereignty-first defense has sparked concern that Canada may seek greater operational autonomy in the north, potentially complicating command structures and strategic coordination. U.S. officials have not publicly criticized the move, but defense analysts describe internal conversations as surprised and cautious. The Pentagon's primary concern is not disagreement, but alignment, ensuring that parallel investments strengthen rather than fragment North American defense. NATO implications ahead of a critical summit. The timing of Canada's pivot is also significant. NATO leaders are preparing for a summit expected to focus heavily on burden sharing, deterrence against Russia, and the alliance's role in the Indo-Pacific. Canada's accelerated spending could be welcomed as a long-overdue commitment, but the emphasis on national sovereignty rather than collective integration adds complexity to planning. European allies are watching closely. Some see Canada's move as setting a precedent that middle powers can assert regional autonomy while remaining formally aligned with NATO. Others worry it signals growing fractures in transatlantic trust. Diplomatic masterstroke or strategic warning. Supporters of Ottawa's approach argue the shift is both rational and overdue. Canada's northern infrastructure has lagged for decades, leaving vast regions vulnerable to surveillance gaps, slow response times, and limited military presence. From this perspective, asserting Arctic sovereignty is not anti-American, it's pro-Canadian. Every serious Arctic nation is upgrading, one defense analyst told U.S. media. Canada choosing to lead in its own backyard should not be controversial. Critics, however, warn that unilateral framing risks misinterpretation at a time when alliance unity is crucial. Even subtle shifts in tone can be amplified by adversaries eager to exploit divisions within NATO. Russia, in particular, has historically tested alliance boundaries through Arctic signaling. Any perception of discord between Washington and Ottawa could invite strategic probing. Rachel Maddow's core question. In her analysis, Maddow posed a central question that now echoes across policy circles. Is Canada redefining alliance leadership or quietly redefining alliance limits? The answer may lie not in defense budgets, but in coordination. If Canada's Arctic investments are deeply integrated with U.S. and NATO systems, the move could strengthen collective security. If pursued in parallel but separate channels, it could complicate joint response planning in a crisis. What comes next? Canadian officials are expected to provide more clarity in the coming weeks, particularly as NATO consultations intensify. U.S. defense leaders, meanwhile, are likely to push for reassurance that NORAD and allied command structures remain central to Arctic defense. For now, the message from Ottawa is clear. The Arctic is no longer a peripheral concern, and Canada intends to play a leading role in shaping its future. Whether that leadership strengthens the alliance or tests it will depend on the diplomacy that follows.